Of all the cartoons that were on air when we were growing up, and by we I mean Indian kids who remember life during the 90s, perhaps none was as eye catching as Ninja Robots. Yes, there were other great cartoons. Cartoon Network and Star Plus had a fantastic home from school lineup, and it was a real difficult choice sometimes. Cartoon Network had the Power Zone, headlined by the Centurions and the SWAT Cats. In the spare minutes between shows, there would be the 5-minute adventures of Space Ghost and Birdman. On Star Plus, meanwhile, there would be Robotech and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was totally a Turtles kid to begin with, fascinated by pizza, cowabunga dudes, and the depiction of New York City. But my Turtles love was challenged big time when Cartoon Network debuted Captain Planet and the Planeteers directly against it. Most days I watched Captain Planet, though I was never able to put a finger on why exactly. Perhaps it was the fact that the protagonists were human, or that their powers had greater potential for more imaginative outcomes. For instance, the arc where the polluting villains all teamed up to combine their powers and they formed Captain Planet's arch nemesis Captain Pollution was a thrilling ride, and I'd like to think there was an idealism about that show and its purity towards the environment that put the right values of conservation into many kids' heads. But while those were all good cartoons, all deserving of their own movie adaptations which suspiciously have not yet materialized, one show towered over all of them. When I first watched promos for Ninja Robots, I was well intrigued. It was the age of Transformers toys. I had one which I still do, which could turn into a jet fighter with inverted wings. Another smaller and less complicated one could turn into a Formula One racing car. In the Ninja Robots promos, these robots were turning into animals: a lion, a falcon, and a dragon. The pre-launch promotion was very effective, and from the very first episode, I was completely hooked. Honestly, I'd never seen anything like it. For someone who was used to the US-style Hanna-Barbera Technicolor cartoons and its successors, the more realistic anime style of Ninja Robots was an immediate upgrade. The humans and aliens in Ninja Robots looked more expressive and appealing. These were cool kids for sure, with great costumes, angular features, and spiky, colorful hair. And the spaceships and the robots were matched only by the plot. And what a plot it was. It began on Mars with the appearance from hyperspace of a pair of alien spaceships. One of them is cream and pink with the unmistakable appearance of a crane. Not only is it shaped like a crane, but it also has a tower the shape of a bird's neck and head with eyes and a beak protruding on its back. This is a horizontal spaceship, able to take on a few different configurations depending on how its neck is arranged. The other spaceship, which was clearly the pursuer, was a super cool looking vertical beast. It had a somewhat humanoid shape, complete with big shield looking projections on its shoulders and one long fin protruding downwards like a blade, with two horn like tusks on each side and giant propulsion boosters on the rear. In this universe, humans have colonized Mars, though the Martian civilization is a bit like a penal colony. That's where our protagonists live: Joe Maya, his brother Mike, and friend Jenny. Their parents also live on Mars, which is ruled by a short, squat warlord named Hazard. Amid the chaos of two alien spaceships suddenly emerging, Joe runs into trouble in the form of giant robots that chase him into the crane spaceship. In there, he briefly locks eyes with what turns out to be the Princess Romina of that ship's home civilization, planet Radorio, before Joe goes to hide in what turns out to be a giant robot. The robot flickers on, and there begins the robot on robot action. The robot that Joe initially pilots is the Golden Lion. In the original Japanese anime by Studio Pierrot, it had a different Japanese name. Joe hides in that robot and it closes its hatch around him as the controls come up and come alive. The machine turns on, and very soon Joe pilots it out of the crane spaceship, which is called Xenos 5, and fights with the invading robots on Mars' surface. He destroys some of them but is eventually cornered. But then, another robot, a smaller and sleeker robot, emerges. This one clearly looks like a ninja warrior, except he's white, red, blue, and gold rather than dark camouflage colors. And he blitzes all the evil robots. He then does something a bit special. He combines with the larger golden robot, and together they turn into a lion and they wipe out the invaders. At the end, the beast disassembles and the mystery robot flies away, leaving Joe Maya and the golden giant. On the wings of the Xenos 5, the princess, her commander Icelander or Irubora, and her aide Jade are joined by their entire crew, looking at the remarkable thing that just happened. In the next few episodes, we get a lot of exposition. It turns out that the alien spaceship has come from a whole different galaxy, where their planet Radorio was invaded by the evil Krokans from the planet Zaboom and their king Annex. There are beautiful shots of the Radorio palace rising amid a smoky alien megalopolis as spaceships descend. The invasion must have come swiftly because the king and queen of Radorio were forced to very quickly evacuate their daughter onto a desperate mission to a distant planet in the Milky Way galaxy called Earth. Going with her would be the three robots, the golden robot we saw, plus a scarlet robot and a purple blue robot. Her mission was to find the legendary ninja warriors from Earth who would pilot these robots, as they had done hundreds of years ago purportedly when their planet was in peril once earlier. As she was leaving, her father, the king, tried to tell her about a fourth robot, but he was cut short. We find out that the Krokan invasion was successful, and after the princess got away, her father, the king, was killed, and her mother, the queen, fell into the Krokan king Annex's clutches. While the princess and her crew are getting to know Joe and his friends, the other aliens, the Krokans, who are led by Commander Grathan, are contacted by the human governor of Mars, the corrupt and vain Hazard. Hazard immediately sees an opportunity to use the Krokan's superior technology and their army to his own advantage. He begins to exert pressure on Joe, his friend Rennie, and his brother Mike by threatening their parents. He lays traps for them to abduct the princess and deliver her to the Krokans, but he's foiled. In their first few encounters, both Rennie and Mike also unlock the ability to pilot the remaining robots. Rennie pilots the Scarlet robot, which turns into a very dangerous falcon, while Mike drives the Violet Blue robot, which turns into a towering dragon which seems to have some serious firepower. The one who is making all of this happen is still a mystery though, the small robot whom everyone begins to call Cybertron. Cybertron in the original Japanese anime is called Tobikage, and he gives the show its name, Ninja Senshi Tobikage. Very soon, the good guys decide to move off Mars. They make their way to a remote outpost on a frozen world. Some rebels live there. It's a pretty desperate situation in general, as the Xenos 5 struggles to stay ahead of the Krokans and Hazard, who are never far off. But Joe and gang make some friends along the way while seeking information on the ninjas, all of which is leading them to the Earth. They leave their parents with the rebels where they'll be safe, and they take on a fourth friend, an older boy called Damien, who is a good fighter already. Aboard the Xenos 5, there is constant bickering between the princess's commander Icelander and Joe. It rankles Icelander that Joe is about the only defense that they have, since he and his friends are able to pilot these robots. Icelander also harbors feelings for the princess, who is already locked in what is sure to become a three-way love triangle with Joe and Rennie. The Xenos 5 continues its flight through the asteroid field in Mars's vicinity, playing a cat and mouse game with Hazard and Grathan. During this time, things appear really bleak, and a point comes when Icelander gives up and leaves the princess. Their morale is jolted by their commander deserting his ship, but Romina and Joe pick up the pieces. And after briefly giving her pursuers the slip, Romina outmaneuvers them as the Xenos 5 makes a big move. It makes a jump to light speed using a technology that will get them not to the Earth but to the Moon in just 2 days' time. Hazard is dumbfounded and thinks there is no way to catch them now, but Grathan has no time for his ignorance of alien technology. He reveals that the Krokan army wields an even more powerful light speed drive and can get to the moon several hours before the Xenos 5, bringing an end to the first of the 5 story arcs. Everyone gets a respite for some time as they make their way towards the moon at light speed. But on the lunar surface, disaster is about to strike. Grathan's battle fortress arrives there, appearing from nothing over the lunar surface. The moon doesn't look like the moon that we know. It's got cities and craters, and there is enough of an atmosphere around it that there is scope for scattered sunlight, rather than looking into the inky nothingness of space. While we are at it, there is also no perceptible impact of lower gravity. In any case, Grathan's command ship, which I believe is called the Sea Terahertz, apparates out of nowhere, wielding what can only be seen as a bazooka. It fires at one of the crater cities unprovoked, obliterating it completely and seemingly killing tens of thousands of people. That immediately catches the lunar government's attention. Hazard, it turns out, had not informed anyone on the Earth or on the Moon that not one but 2 races of aliens had come to Mars and were busy fighting each other using next level technology. The Krokan's very convincing display of holding a gun to the moon's head leads to a trap being set for the good guys, who are a few hours away still. When they appear, they receive a frosty response. And on a sortie to check the place out, Joe and co run into an enemy robot, shocked that it was waiting for them. But when push comes to shove, it turns out that the mysterious Cybertron also followed them to the moon and saves them yet again. They encounter a few issues on the moon, such as their supplies running out and some other traps, but they make some acquaintances also along the way who help them out. But things get real dangerous once again when an old friend reappears. Icelander, the former commander of the Xenos 5, appears on Grathan's ship instead. He looks very well rested and noticeably buffer and more cocky. Clearly, he's had a good vacation while no longer being hunted down. And he's not there for any good reason, that's for sure. He's a very ambitious guy and he's ready to switch sides to see where it gets him. He appears at the right time because Grathan is tired of having his two varieties of seemingly automated robots torn apart repeatedly by Joe, Jenny, and Mike's more powerful machines. He's building a robot of his own, and this one is a big, scary, giant blue robot. In the English version, this robot was called the Mantis, but I'm not quite sure. Icelander asks to take it out for a spin, and Joe and the others are hard pressed indeed at the appearance of the new and more powerful adversary which towers over all of them. Icelander's Mantis has all these appendages and looks deadly cool, and goes one on one against the Golden Ninja piloted by Joe. Eventually, in a sword battle, Joe manages to slash at the Mantis, causing a gash in its cockpit. And through it, everyone sees Icelander, their former friend now turned deadly foe. While Icelander calls off the fight for the moment, his reappearance severely disheartens the princess and her crew. In coming episodes, some of them even try to defect, but they are shown no mercy by Icelander, who only wants to use them for his own gain. Then something happens that ups the stakes entirely. King Annex has had enough of waiting. He's on his way to do it himself and to see what's taking his army and his commander so long. The imminent arrival of his king makes Grathan go into panic mode. He doubles down on his efforts to deliver the princess on a platter for the emperor when he arrives, and so he sends Icelander in for an all-out assault. As usual, it's Joe versus Icelander who gets the edge this time and brushes off the others as well. He is about to deliver the killing blow when, in a small generic alien fighter, the princess herself comes out to fight her old champion and to defend her new one. Seeing the princess out and vulnerable makes everyone go a bit crazy. Grathan most of all. He has been drinking copiously and he gets a bit too excited, a bit like King Aegon getting on his dragon Sunfire in House of the Dragon, and he climbs aboard a ship and flies to the lunar surface. Grathan is there in no time, and he even shoots Icelander out of his way in his desperation to be the one who either nabs or kills the princess. Unfortunately for him, with things looking very bleak for the good guys, the savior finally appears. Cybertron comes out of nowhere to save the day. He fires a bolt and hits Grathan's ship. It's a mismatch really, and within seconds Grathan is spiraling towards the lunar surface towards his doom. The princess gets away, but Grathan's ship crashes, exploding on impact and killing him. One threat is neutralized as the second arc ends, but a far bigger one is just about to arrive. While the characters and viewers are still processing Grathan's demise, a blinding flash of light emerges in the inky black sky. Out of light speed emerges a gargantuan spaceship. And in keeping with the Kroken design philosophy, this ship is also more vertically laid out than the Earth's variety of spaceships, which are basically horizontal cylinders. The Emperor ship looks a bit like a giant bird perched on a cable and has parts that look like sloping roofs. The makers are careful to give you a shot where Grathan's spaceship, the sexy looking sea terahertz, is in the foreground in front of Annex's Imperial Space Fortress, which I think is called the Excalento. Grathan's old ship looks like no more than a speck in comparison, like a crow circling an elephant. We see King Annex, a bald, tyrannical looking chap with some kind of tattoo whisker feature and red eyes, and a cloak that definitely looks like an emperor would wear it. With him is a stylishly dressed girl who is clearly a bit older than either Jenny or the princess, and she's clearly important as well. Because while everyone else is on their knees before the emperor, she's owning the dais. Her name is Sharum. But is she his advisor or general, or more likely his daughter? That's unclear to begin with. She wields authority immediately though, and with arrogance as well. In fact, later it's strongly implied that she's actually Annex's lover, but at the same time, she's also a very dangerous fighter. Maybe the most dangerous solo fighter in the entire series. But this is a moment for politics, and Icelander steals it. He shows initiative and gumption, outmaneuvering Hazard, who has been looking to curry favor with the Emperor. Hazard wants the Earth, but he has comparatively less to offer than Icelander, who is also a warrior and a military man who used to be the top Radorio general. He impresses the Emperor by flying out in his big blue robot and once again giving Joe and friends a hard time. And though he doesn't emerge victorious, Annex has seen enough. He gives Icelander Grathan's old ship and his job. Joe and co are feeling the heat, and they decide they cannot sit still and be cornered by Annex's overwhelming scale advantage. They make a daring ploy to escape the moon and to make it to Earth, where finally they touch down on the beautiful blue planet that used to be their home. The beauty of Earth is especially a theme of the narrative. Joe was only a boy when he left, and Mike and Jenny have no memories of Earth at all. The princess has never seen a planet so beautiful, and over on Annex's ship, neither has Sharum. A consequent ongoing competition for Sharum is that she doesn't want the Earth to be destroyed. She wants Annex to give it to her as a gift. And so she too enters the race to rule Earth alongside Hazard, who is generally always getting shunted this way and that. Once the Xenos 5 lands on the Earth, a long running saga of trying to get the United Earth government's support begins. Joe has an old friend named Ronan, who is a military pilot as well as a politician. He's a bit like Omar Abdullah and his father is like Farooq Abdullah, and they're on the side of the good guys this time. But Annex's ship is much bigger and he's clearly more powerful, so the Earth's rulers don't want to be on his bad side either. Both sets of aliens are highly inconvenient as far as the Earth is concerned. Aboard the Xenos 5, now two issues emerge. The first is the mission. The entire reason they came to the Earth in the first place was to find the legendary ninja warriors who had piloted the robots hundreds of years ago when Radorio had come under attack. But Joe and friends can also pilot the robots. So are they descended from the legendary ninja? Nobody is quite sure. And the second issue is that they're out of fuel. The Xenos 5 runs on a special fuel called calcium that is rare and unstable on the Earth, and so they're going to need a refill. There are also the frequent mood swings and the melancholy of the young main characters, which is always likely to be disturbed by a squadron of Krokan robots coming in. During some of these battles and with Annex's arrival, some more backstory begins to be revealed. The good guys find an SD card of some sort with Damien of all people, which is a bit contrived, which this happens to have a program in it that explains exactly how Cybertron combines with the other three machines. The three machines have a damage or power level, and when that drops below a point, Cybertron appears. So that's a further clue about Cybertron, who remains the show's biggest enigma. On the other ship, Sharum is unclear why exactly Annex has taken such a liking to Icelander, apart from him being quite a good warrior and dashing and cocky and all that. Annex takes Sharum to a secret chamber on his ship, and there in the dark is another robot. The coolest looking robot we've seen so far, jet black with funky tassels and red fixtures. Annex says that this is the Mantis, a different Mantis than Icelander's big blue robot, and that it's the most powerful robot at his disposal, but he's not managed to find a pilot for him yet. But that the Mantis, which is called Zero Kage in the anime, has been acting funny ever since Icelander came aboard the ship. Back on the Xenos 5, more secrets are about to be revealed. Late one night, Joe stumbles into a section that he's not been to before, which is kept locked at all times. Once he's in, he gets perhaps a bit too far and is electrocuted, and he ends up in the hospital. The gang quizzes the princess about it, and it turns out that she has a key to this room, but it is unclear what it is exactly. They go in properly this time, and it turns out that it leads into a secret golden chamber that has some kind of a bird-shaped engine inside it. Nobody is able to guess what this is for, except that it is important. This is the first major clue we begin to get that the Xenos 5 is not just a generic spaceship, but may have something special about it also. Things are heating up though, and something has to give. It happens as a lot of things do on the battlefield. Icelander, who is getting more and more ambitious in his desire to impress the Emperor and whose obsession with Joe and one-sided love for the princess has turned into a mania, goes for broke. He launches a massive attack on the Xenos 5. The three ninja robots are no match for him and his shadow bots. That is, until Cybertron appears and combines with Joe's robot to form the Golden Lion. But it's not going to be so easy. The Golden Lion plays a bit of possum. He hides in the dense forest, and at the opportune time he springs with a sword in his mouth, and he slices clean through the Mantis robot, cutting it in half. Icelander, whose cockpit is located right where the robot came apart, meaning he should have been cut in half as well, falls out of the towering robot in slow motion. But as he falls, something begins to happen. His body seems to be undergoing some kind of transformation, and we get intercuts of the Black Mantis aboard Annex's ship suddenly waking up. It's communicating with Icelander in some way, making cool sounds and blinking its eyes. And in a flash, it disappears, and it instantly reappears where Icelander is. He is absorbed into the mantis, which is not all that much bigger than he is. This new robot then runs amok. It grabs the golden lion by the tail and it swings it round and round, hurling it a distance. The good guys have no answer to it, but they're going to get a reprieve because it's clearly on a bit of autopilot and not playing to kill. The mantis with Icelander inside returns to outer space to annex his ship, while the Xenos 5 gang remains stunned, unclear if this new enemy will be too much even for Cybertron to handle. Outgunned and cornered, they turn to the Earth for help. Slowly, the Earth is coming around to believing that these guys are the good guys, but even more now, they believe that the good guys are going to finish last. They hatch a plot. They invite the princess for negotiations, intending to capture her and deliver her to Annex to get him to hopefully leave them alone. Joe, however, suspects this, and so he also plans a trick. They dress up the princess's handmaiden Jane, like how Keira Knightley pretended to be Queen Padme Amidala instead of Natalie Portman in Star Wars: A Phantom Menace. And Joe takes her to the United Earth headquarters, where they are promptly locked in a glass room. Things are about to get worse because Icelander picks exactly this moment to attack the Xenos 5 in his new Zero Kage robot. It's a desperate battle. Mike in the blue robot goes toe to toe with him, while Jenny in the scarlet robot takes on the rest of the Krokan robots solo. Mike puts up a good show but is outclassed and is about to be beaten when Cybertron shows up. Cybertron doesn't battle Zero Kage directly, however. He combines with the Blue Ninja to create the Dragon robot, the largest combination robot of the three, which is only appearing for the second time. They had a pitched battle, full of smoke and mirrors and wicked sick moves. But inside Zero Kage, Icelander has the beating of Mike and Cybertron. He lands a sword slash right through the middle, forcing Cybertron to break the transformation and decisively defeating the Dragon robot. Cybertron disappears, but it becomes clear very soon that he's gone to get reinforcements. Something begins happening where Joe is, and before you know it, he's teleported away. The next thing he knows, the Zero Kage is charging towards him, sword drawn, and so he hurriedly parries. And as he does so, we see that he is inside Cybertron. Cybertron then outclasses the Zero Kage and forces it to flee, ending the battle with a flourish. Joe pops out, and it becomes apparent that a dagger that he carries has somehow become linked to Cybertron. So the stage is set, with Icelander and Joe in their new machines as the third arc closes. With Joe now in Cybertron, the good guys stand a much better chance, but they still need fuel and they still need the ninjas. And on top of it all, they now have one spare robot that needs a pilot. Joe's golden lion robot is sitting idle. Damien then begins to tinker inside it, but gets no luck. Meanwhile, with a lot of help, they manage to get a hold of a truck with the kind of fuel that they need. They are opposed, however, by Sharum and her squad of female ninjas with their cool punk rock hairstyles and slick body flicker moves. These girls are dangerous, and you begin to wonder that if anybody is a legendary ninja, it's these guys. They almost cause a disaster because the fuel is wildly unstable, but ultimately they are defeated. This is one of the few battles we get without any robots, which is a bit of a breather after the insane past few episodes. But you get a feeling that we are about to get a lot of Joe versus Icelander action, and that's exactly what happens. It's pretty clear to anyone watching that this may not be the first time that Cybertron and Zero Kage have clashed. In fact, they seem to be opposites of each other, both in terms of nature and in their paint job. Their battles are fun, but they get a bit repetitive since they're too evenly matched. If anything, they nullify each other, which puts Mike and Jenny under the cosh because they have to take on all the other Shadowbots. One fine day, when the chips are down, Damien finally prevails, managing to turn on the Golden Ninja and combining with Joe. Once again, the good guys have their quartet back together. But their quest remains unfulfilled. They still don't know who, what, or where the legendary ninja are. And so they go to the place where the ninja legend originates, which is Japan. There they discover an old painting of what looks for sure like how a medieval person would have perceived the Xenos 5. Like a gigantic double crane flying through the sky. Like what Leonardo da Vinci would have thought when he saw a Boeing 747 for the first time. The story with the photo is that several centuries ago, a giant crane appeared in the sky. People came out of it and battled with the local ninja, capturing some of them and flying off with them. While there are no ninja today, it confirms suspicions that the Xenos 5 is somehow related to the 5 robots. That is the 3 robots which live in its hangar, plus Cybertron which combines with them, and then the Mantis which is related to Cybertron in its own way. Meanwhile, Icelander is figuring out some lore of his own. He runs an experiment to find out more about Cybertron, who remains a mystery despite the fact that he lets Joe pilot him around. But where does he come from and where does he go? It's all still unclear. And so Icelander's experiment yields a startling response. It becomes apparent that Cybertron also resides in the Xenos 5 and he appears from the ship when required. Perhaps he lives in that secret room, but we've not seen him around much. At this point, Joe and the princess seem to reach a bit of an impasse. They don't have ninjas or more information about them, but they are clearly as strong right now as they are ever going to get. They've been getting the upper hand against Icelander's forces. What's needed now is to make a demonstration of their ability, if nothing else to convince the Earth to side with them. Joe plans a daring attack, their first ever proactive attack on their enemies. However, not everybody's on board. Icelander's old deputy Gameron, who is the current commander of the Xenos 5, has a love-hate relationship with Joe. But the bigger love-hate issues are with Rennie. She is clearly in love with Joe, but he generally takes her for granted, which often causes her to leave and then come back right at the last moment. It's also unclear what the princess feels in all this. She doesn't make her feelings clear either. But she and Rennie decide to not compete for Joe till they've won. Joe and the Xenos 5 carry out the attack, but it's not as successful as they'd hoped, as Rennie did not join them on time and Icelander gets in their way. It's frustrating, but it does leave its mark. Because aboard the Excalento, it forces a strategic rethink. King Annex decides to leave. Perhaps he sees that this is not going to be as easy a campaign as he had thought. He gives control of the Excalento to Icelander and to Sharum, who don't get along so well but seem to have a bit of a flirtatious dynamic going. Annex meanwhile takes the smaller Sea Terahertz ship and appears to depart for the Black Star Galaxy where the planet Zaboom is located. But in reality, he sticks around at a moderate distance behind a suitably sized asteroid, watching from a risk-free distance. Before leaving, he reveals a crucial piece of lore to Sharum. Aboard his ship, he has a fragment of an ancient manuscript. It's about one half of the whole, and in it, a bird-like figure resembling the Xenos 5 but more primordial is seen quite clearly ripping right through a spherical heavenly body. Annex says that the ninjas hold the key to wielding a power that can destroy a whole planet, but that he doesn't believe that the ninjas are really from the Earth. This leads Icelander to contemplate what he knows, via a flashback to what his own king, Romina's father, had told him in his final moments, but was unable to complete what he had to say about Cybertron. Icelander wonders whether this was the final secret. The final televised arc of our story begins as Annex leaves. Practically minutes after he departs, Icelander is talking some smack inside his gigantic new ship when there is a blinding flash of light. And from it, Xenos 5 suddenly appears. Joe is having another go at attacking the Excalento. They had made a jump to light speed and appeared ready to attack at peak velocity. The surprise catches Icelander off guard. At this time, Sharum was on her own transport ship on her way down to the Earth to attack the Xenos 5. She gets an SOS to return immediately. Joe enters the battlefield, combining with Jenny's Scarlet Ninja to form the Falcon. The Falcon has proved virtually unstoppable in every battle thus far, and it feels like neither the Krokans nor Icelander have any solution for it. It begins to burn red hot, emanating devastating flames from its wings, which burn anything they come into contact with. The Falcon performs multiple close flybys of the Excalento, obliterating its defenses. Finally, it causes a huge explosion. It's a stunning moment, like smiting the face of a god and causing it to bleed. Back on the Earth, the ruling council realizes it has made a mistake and underestimated Joe and gang. The turning point has been reached. The Earth will side with the Radorians. We are clearly nearing what appears to be a final battle, but the Excalento is also not just going to sit in orbit waiting to be attacked. Icelander and Sharum also plot devastating attacks, even as Joe and the princess try to work out the modalities of their cooperation with the Earth Council. Joe and Icelander are entering another dynamic in their rivalry also. When they fight, both of them seem to exert more and more energy to defeat one another. Their muscles bulge and they begin to strain as their robots become more and more powerful. The gulf between Cybertron and the Mantis and all the other robots is becoming larger and larger. Whoever wins this battle will likely win the war also. But war plans are afoot on both sides, and one person who wants no part in it is Hazard. Unwilling to join in the fighting, he's planning to return to Mars. Secretly, he stored a large army of Krokan Shadowbots on board his own ship. He's hoping that the two alien races and the Earth knock each other out, and he can claim and pick off whoever remains and emerge the real winner. Meanwhile, aboard the Excalento, Sharum decides that enough is enough. So far, she has tried to keep the Earth safe, but now winning is all that matters. She's resolved that this will be the final battle, and she plans to land the Excalento on the Earth, which everybody believes will be the end of the planet as they know it. But Joe and co have other plans, and they prepare to cut the Excalento off before it enters the Earth's atmosphere. Joe again uses the same plan. He combines with the Scarlet Robot, and the Falcon streaks towards the Excalento, destroying everything in its path. The gold and blue ninjas try to block Icelander from chasing and are successful till he begins to expend more energy and leaves them breathless. This time, Joe's plan goes one step further than an external attack. He has the Falcon drop him off with the Excalento and he sneaks inside a Cybertron, one small and deadly robot in a gigantic capital ship. Rennie tries to block Icelander coming after Joe, but is no match for the Mantis. They'll have to watch from the outside, fighting the Shadowbots that remain. Inside the Excalento, things are getting trippy. After battling a mass of sentient cables, Joe makes it to the reactor room but is intercepted by Icelander. The pair begin to fight right next to the nuclear core, making Sharum go crazy. But Icelander is beyond listening by this time. He only wants Joe. Sharum has no choice as they're damaging the reactor as collateral. She tells her crew to fire at both robots. They're both zapped by powerful lasers, but as they're both hit, something seems to happen between them. There is a blinding flash of light and an explosion. Everyone else runs for it, thinking the Excalento is about to blow, but it holds on, barely, clearly incapacitated. There is no indication where Joe and Icelander are. The fighters regroup back on Earth, resolved to mount one final effort to destroy the Krogan threat once and for all. By this point, not far from the Earth, hiding behind an asteroid, Annex has seen enough. He dials Sharum and he tells her to immediately return to Krogan. She has got no choice but to obey, and she orders the Excalento's crew to quickly get the monster ship running again. But she's not going to have it so easy. The Earth is finally ready to fight in earnest. They launch all of their Air Force squadrons, led by Ronin. The Xenos 5 also takes off. The ninja robots are already fighting the Shadowbots in space, and together with the Earth's forces, they destroy all of them. The Excalento is a sitting duck now, and on its scanners, it picks up that the Xenos 5 has disappeared suddenly from its last known position. They know what's coming. Within moments, the ship that looks like a crane appears out of light speed in a blinding flash of light, firing everything it's got. It's a speck of light itself, flying into the jaws of the gargantuan that is the Excalento, but it uses a powerful weapon to blast a hole in the enemy fortress's hull, and it makes its way inside. Meanwhile, Icelander has recovered. He's hurt and upset at Sharum for firing at him, but he quickly comes round when they decide that he needs to find Joe, who is still aboard the ship somewhere. Right on cue elsewhere, Joe is up to no good also. He's pretending to be a Krogan officer, planting explosives in key places and sabotaging the ship. Finally, he gets caught by Icelander and the pair have a fight without robots. Meanwhile, the Xenos 5 is causing wanton destruction inside the Excalento. The other three ninja robots are also inside by now, and they wreak havoc on the enemy robot production facilities. But the Excalento is almost repaired. Sharum thinks she's got it won because she'll very quickly jump to light speed with the Xenos 5 inside the Excalento. Just as the countdown winds down, however, Joe's explosives go off. The failed jump to light speed causes a chain reaction. The damage is catastrophic. The ship begins to explode. The Xenos 5 fires at will, attempting to escape the doomed vessel. Inside a control room, Joe and Icelander are still fighting, oblivious to the explosions happening around them. Sharum and her female ninjas try to climb aboard their own transport vessel to escape, but the explosion catches them out. Their ship goes up in a fireball inside its docking bay, killing all of them. The Xenos 5 just about makes it out on time. There is an apocalyptic explosion and the Excalento is utterly vaporized. Not far away, in what is still a very confusing scene, the light and flame also appears to swallow up King Annex, who is watching aboard the Sea Terahertz. It appears that he too could be caught up in the explosion radius, and his fate is left open-ended. The Krokans are defeated, but where is Joe? In the last episode, the good guys are back in space, which is littered with space debris from the Excalento's explosion. They're searching for Joe, and like the smallest needle in an infinitely large haystack, Rennie happens to find him. But as she finds him, it appears she wasn't the first. Hazard captures both of them. We are next aboard Hazard's ship. Joe and Icelander, as well as Cybertron and the Mantis, which look beat up but undamaged, are also captured. All four seem unconscious. Joe is the first to come round. He and Rennie plot an escape, summoning Cybertron. As almost always, Hazard is no match, and they get out of Hazard's ship and they head towards the Xenos 5. Aboard the Xenos 5, meanwhile, after a bit of drama at not being allowed to search for Joe herself, a stricken Princess Romina has a fall, and from her crown, a new SD card is found. They plug it in and they discover that it connects Cybertron, the Mantis, and Xenos 5, all three of them. It also has the remaining half of Annex's ancient manuscript. It shows both Cybertron and the Mantis together, combining with the Xenos 5 to wield a devastating power. This explains why Annex had been after the robots, the Xenos 5 and the princess, they think. Joe and Jenny return, just as Icelander also escapes Hazard's clutches. There is no time for respite. The Mantis emerges outside the Xenos 5 for the final battle. Joe goes out to meet him in Cybertron. They begin to fight, but then Hazard's ship enters the fray also. It turns out that Hazard has booby-trapped the two robots and rigged them to blow. He presses the trigger and they explode. They're made of stronger stuff than he thought, however, and they remain whole. Cybertron is the first to wake up and Joe is angry. He launches towards Hazard, who tries to fire everything to stop him but misses. Joe hits his mark and Hazard's ship explodes, killing him. Joe returns to the Xenos 5 where the Mantis has been moved inside. Icelander has been removed from it and is down, no longer fighting. Joe and he have a moment where it looks like they may fight again, but Icelander knows that he has lost. He offers a hand and after some hesitation, Joe takes it. As they clasp hands, something happens. They are enveloped in light and so are their robots. They are each put back inside Cybertron and the Mantis, which are glowing golden. The robots fly together down the corridors of the Xenos 5. They head towards that secret room in the ship. The wall parts to let them in. The golden room with the bird-shaped chamber opens up, and the two robots appear to combine half and half as they enter the chamber. Suddenly, the entire ship begins transforming. Inside, the crew gets ready for flight. It's all hands on deck as Mike, Rennie, and Damien say their last goodbyes to Ronan, who is returning to the Earth, while they are continuing with the Xenos 5, no doubt because Joe is clearly still on board. The ship emits a high-pitched call of a crane, and enveloped in golden light, it streaks into the cosmos. Its outline changed from the previous straight-line robotic alien ship to an actual primordial crane-like being. And that is where the show ends. But what happens next? What just happened? What does it all mean? We never really find out. There are 2 more episodes which are all recaps. This is where the story ends as far as the cartoon goes. The indication is that they are on their way back to Radorio to liberate it from the Krokans. But should we take it for granted that they will do it, now that they have harnessed this incredible power? And what is the power exactly? What were the ninjas? Because initially we are given to understand that they were taken from the Earth, though Annex believes otherwise. He believes they were aliens to begin with. So when the Xenos 5 came to the Earth all those centuries ago, did it actually leave people behind rather than to pick them up? Could that be why something about Joe and his friends was able to get a response from the robots? Or was it just an inexplicable connection, like the robots taking a liking for their pilot and forming a bond with them for higher level reasons? And what happened to Annex? If he's gone, then one may believe that it was all over anyway. But that is never really clarified and is a bit of a sideways way of killing a main character. In fact, the primary antagonist. It doesn't follow one of the most important thumb rules of storytelling, which is to not kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The explosion that killed the Excalento killed the entire Krokan army on board and also Sharum. Icelander and Joe survived for unclear reasons. Maybe their connections with their robots protected them. But why also kill off Annex as collateral? That too when he was explicitly hiding at a safe distance. Was it really supposed to end like this? Something felt off, especially to a 10-year-old back in 1998 like me. For a long time there was nothing, but then well into the internet and Web 3.0 era, with all the wikias and now with AI, it was possible to find out what happened and what was supposed to happen. It turns out that the show, which was made by Studio Pierrot in Japan and written by Yuji Watanabe, was cancelled before it could be completed because it didn't sell enough toy robots. It was based on an original story, not some source material like anime. It was originally made in 1985 and it ran for 43 episodes, meaning that by the time it ran in India, it had already been gone for over a decade. However, in the last few years, the remaining material for the show has turned up in other forms, or told in haphazard, undeveloped ways in video games and other such. It gives us the bare bones of what was to come. The show effectively ended on 41 episodes, but the original plan was to have a minimum of 50 episodes. This is where we would get the intergalactic war in space, where the final arc was to be a full-blown liberation war for Radorio by overthrowing Annex from his seat on Zaboom. As a result, Romina would ascend as queen. We were also to learn more about the lore of the ninja robots, in particular about the origins of Cybertron and why he was sentient in the first place. The idea, as per sources, was that both Tobikage and Zero Kage were ancient biomechanical beings programmed by their scientist makers on Radorio to form an automated planetary defense system. The other three robots, the ninja robots and the Xenos 5, were the reason that there was a prophecy in the first place. Because they were created such that in consonance with human spirit, they could enter the battlefield and combine with Cybertron and unlock an even greater potential. So these high-tech ninja robots were actually an ancient weapon that took the best that the scientists could do in terms of programming and automation and combined it with power derived from special worthy human beings to make the ultimate weapon. But what can stand before the Xenos 5 with as much power as it has? It turns out that that was not all the robots that were out there. Just as Cybertron had its three robots to combine with, the Mantis also had its own complement of support robots. He would also combine with them to form various beasts and unlock a greater power. At some point in the past, the Mantis and his set of ninja robots fell into the Kroken's hands. We were also to see the full might of Annex's forces, including an even more powerful space fortress and other deadly weapons. Apparently, concept art for the Mantis' support beasts was created but never animated. What's also not clear is at what point did the makers decide to hurriedly wrap it all up. Annex departing was a clear sign that they wanted to save him for the final battle that was yet to come. It is also possible that they didn't know that they'd be going off air when they made what happened to be the last episode. Because very pointedly they leave Rennie, Romina and Joe's love triangle unresolved. Joe and the princess never have any closure, even though Rennie gets a lot of inconclusive screen time with him. It brought a disappointing end to what could have been a mind-blowing watch, especially for Indians like me. In the pre-everything days, ninja robots had gone absolutely viral. We used to play ninja robots during our sports period in school instead of playing actual sports. I never got to be Joe back then. I was always one of the unpopular fellows like Gameron, or if I got lucky, Damien. I never got over this ending the way that it did, without resolution after building up so much. The robots were sexy, the animation was excellent, and had a curved lines and early stage high definition quality. It looked like it had been made by animators who had a great vision for what space age technology would look like. Even when I watch it now, which is 40 years after it was made, the technology would still hold up and not look out of place. But is that it? Well, I sure hope it's not. I've seen in recent years there have been several remakes of old cartoons and shows. The Centurions and SWAT Cats were never finished conclusively either, but there are ample calls for them to be remade. Captain Planet is getting the movie treatment apparently. That may happen in a few years' time. Meanwhile, Voltron the Legendary Defender was given a big-time reboot with modern animation by DreamWorks and Netflix. If you ask me, Netflix and the others don't know how popular Ninja Robots was in India back in the day. They're busy with the cartoons Americans grew up with, but we watched lots as well, and maybe they should start considering making ninja robots properly, from the start, in the right spirit, with the original creators' working notes and a good producer at the helm, without ruining it like a lot of stuff is ruined. Tell the story properly, do Ninja Robots fans justice, fulfill the prophecy, and we will love you for it forever. Could it happen though? Maybe if you all really comment, share, like and subscribe and build a chorus that somebody hears. So it begins here. Let's bring Ninja Robots back. That's all from me, Ankit Prasad, on this episode of His Analysis. I'll see you again very soon.